You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Learn more at wearelibertarians.com.
This is Jeremiah Morrell, Boss Hog Liberty Podcast. This is going to be a special edition. I am recording live from a diner in Maryland. First time in Maryland ever. So this is going to be a special episode that we recorded. Myself and a guy named Steve Sullivan. He's from the County Council in Montgomery County, Maryland. Steve is a morning radio show host, SB Nation AM, heard all over the country, and he's the afternoon producer on a drive time show here in Washington, D.C. So this is my conversation with Steve, a special edition of the Boss Hog Liberty Podcast. You can find Steve's information, or Solly as I call him, in the show notes. Enjoy.
Hey there. Welcome to the Steve Solomon Show. It's Monday, March 26th, 2018, and if you're confused as to why I didn't do a show this morning on Monday, as I've done every Monday morning for gosh knows how long, it's because I knew on Monday night I was having a special guest come on in, and I was going to record this with him, and I'll post it tonight. So on a very special episode of the Steve Solomon Show today, I'm with Jeremiah Morrell. Hi, Jeremiah.
Hey, Solly. How we doing, man?
Good. So let's give some background to Jeremiah for the listeners who don't know who he is. A longtime Zabe Show listener, I guess, back from the XM days, and from a suburb of Indiana.
Yep, Newcastle, Indiana, the far, far east side, halfway between Indianapolis and Dayton, Newcastle, Indiana.
Newcastle. It's funny because I think Newcastle is like Springfield. There's not one in every state, but there's definitely a Newcastle, Pennsylvania, and there's a Newcastle, Delaware that I know of.
There's Newcastle, Wyoming. Yeah, they're all over the place.
Yeah, it's like Springfield, I guess. But that's pretty cool. So Jeremiah has been a fan of the show for a long time, and a Zabe Facebook guy, which is where I saw him first, and also a guy into politics and running for office in his own area there in Indiana, like I am here in Montgomery County. So a radio guy who does his own podcast just like me. So a lot of similarities between us. And he's like, hey, I'm coming to town to D.C. End of March. How about we get together? I said, absolutely, because we exchanged emails on Facebook, and I see his posts and whatnot. I'm like, oh, this is a cool guy. Let me get to know him a little better. So I said, sure, come on by the studio. We'll record the podcast. So I was talking to him before the show here, getting to know a little bit about him. You're here with Purdue University, right?
I'm here with the
convention?
Purdue University School of Ag. We come out here once a year advocating for their extension group. So that's the people that put together 4-H and all these different programs that are in every county in America. So out here meeting with congressional delegations, just trying to get our little piece of the government to eat.
Cool. So Jeremiah's I lean on him and many of our other listeners. When I decided to run for county council in Montgomery County, I had no practical experience on how to do anything politically. I kind of saw it from afar. Being in the D.C. area, we see politics nationally, of course, all the time, and anyone with CNN or Fox sees that all the time. But I got more interested in local government, and it started years ago when I used to do the public affairs show that we had here, and we had on local council people, state senators, congressmen, the mayor of D.C. We had all sorts of people on, and it got me interested in local government, and that's kind of the path I took. I was like, oh, wow, the Montgomery County Council does all this very, incredible things for our county. They decide so much stuff about our daily lives. They have way more influence on us than any senator or congressman do. Your local governments, your local House and Senate probably have more influence on you than the actual Senate or Congress nationally, don't you think? That's how I felt when I learned more about local government.
Yeah, so these guys are the ones. Number one, they're from your neighborhood. They're close to you, so they're the ones that can raise your taxes the fastest.
Yep.
I'm running for Henry County, Indiana's county council as well, just like you are.
Right.
And we're a community of about 50,000 people. There's 4 seats in my race, so I've got probably about 7,000 folks that are going to vote in my election this fall.
That's pretty good.
So it's our county has issues like anybody else does, and we're dealing with agricultural issues, an economy that's changing as Indianapolis continues to grow to the east. We're looking at having to share land between ag interest, business interest, houses, whether or not they're going to go in. Lots and lots of decisions to be made, and I'm sure you guys have similar things here in Montgomery County.
A lot. I mean, you're way more connected and have been more politically involved than me, because I just really got into this full force a year ago. You've run for office before, and you're running for office again, and I kind of just got into it and really learned a lot about. Not that I thought I knew everything, because I've born, raised, and lived in this county my entire life, and I know the neighborhoods. I know some about business and transportation issues, education, but I really didn't know a lot of the specific details. And it's interesting because Montgomery County has 1 million people. It's the biggest suburb of D.C. Basically, we have several big cities here, over 50,000 people. Silver Spring, here where we are in Rockville, is a very big suburb, and it's interesting because we're a county that is, yes, a huge urban area around D.C., but it's an enormous county, at least size-wise for Maryland. Probably in Indiana, the counties area-wise are bigger and much more less densely populated. But 30 miles north of us is still Montgomery County. We have Damascus and Clarksburg, and we have this huge 1,000 acres ag reserve that's rural area. So even here in Montgomery County, we have a fair amount of farming. And sadly, the amount of farmers up county compared to the huge dense population down county doesn't give them a lot of voice. Why? But of course, they have their own state senators and state delegates that advocate for them, and probably a lot of people don't know. I didn't even know until a couple of years ago that here we're in District 19 of Maryland, and we have our state senator and 3 House representatives, and I thought about running for one of those as well for state delegate, and I saw I don't know how it works in other states, but it sure does vary. As does for the county council, the time commitment and salaries. It astonished me that some states pay their state senators $10,000 a year, and it's a part-time job, and they're in session a few months a year and stuff like that. Here in Maryland, they pay $50,000 a year for state delegates, and they're in session for 3 months, and they get basically 9 months off. It's quite a deal. I guess it varies in Indiana compared to here.
Indiana, our general assemblies, we have a state house that has a state senate and a group of state representatives. So you got 100 representatives and 50 senators. Those guys, they have 2 sessions, a short session and a long session. On average, they're going to make about $25,000 to $30,000 a year, and it's a part-time citizen legislature. So they're expected to have some sort of other job, or they're a farmer, or they're an attorney, or a teacher, or they're retired.
Right.
I made a run for that race in 2012, and I ran as a libertarian. So everything I do is with the handicap of being a libertarian.
Right. We haven't mentioned that yet.
Yep.
That for those who don't even know, libertarian, of course, is not one of the 2 major parties, and is difficult to break in, not only nationally but probably locally as well. Because are you on the ballot, or do you have to only run in the general? How does it work?
That's a good question. We do not have a taxpayer-funded primary as the Libertarian Party in Indiana. We have automatic ballot access because we have been an established political party, and we have at least 2% of the Secretary of State vote in Indiana every 4 years. So that assures that we are automatically on the ballot. We have a convention instead of a primary. So I won our convention, and that was actually last weekend when I announced my candidacy. So I will be on the November general election ballot in a 3-way race with a Democrat, Republican, and myself.
Very cool, because I considered running. Honestly, I'm a centrist on a lot of things, a moderate, and I'm a registered Democrat, have been my whole life, but my views are independent would be more more suited, I guess. I skew both ways on certain issues, but no one has ever won as an independent or anything but a Democrat in this county in any race. All of our 9 out of 9 council members are Democrats. All 3 House delegates are Democrats. The state senator has been a Democrat, and they have been for dozens of years. So I was like, you know what? I better run as a Democrat, and maybe I'm the most centrist Democrat running, which I probably am compared to a lot of people who are very progressive, socialist almost, who are running. So I thought, why not? It's really my only chance of winning, and because we don't have anything but that. Because I was told that there's someone from the Green Party. I don't know if there's any libertarians attempting to run, but they need signatures basically to get on the ballot, at least here in the county council race.
Well, that's what happens when you don't have ballot access. You have to spend the time and effort that you're spending to try to win the primary. You're just going to fight through, and the money you're going to spend to just simply get on the ballot. Luckily, because we do have that ballot access, I only need 2 signatures: my county chairman and my county secretary, and that's it.
Very cool. Because I was told I think you need 10,000 signatures to get on the ballot here as an independent, and even then, in the general, people vote so along party lines, you don't really have a chance of winning. Literally, it was 160,000 people voted in the 2014 general for the Democrats in the county council at large race, and I know my limitations as a my notoriety is limited in radio here, locally and nationally, in terms of people who know who I am, but not enough to go out and vote for me. I'd say if Czaban ran for office, he has much more notoriety, or someone like Tony Kornheiser or somebody with a huge name in radio in town would probably have a pretty easy time of getting elected. But I thought maybe I have enough notoriety, and with the push on radio from the guys here and some other media connections that I have, maybe it'll be enough, and I still have no idea. It's tough to gauge because, as I've told the guys before, their term limits were voted in 2016 here in Montgomery County, and until then, council members could serve forever if they wanted, and many have, and so our county executive is term limited out, and 4 of our 9 council members are term limited out. Actually, the council members are all running for county executive now.
So you're looking at a completely clean slate, wide open. And the thing that struck me about your race is you're one of 40 people running for 4 spots.
Yes, there's 33 Democrats and 4 Republicans who are running. So 37 are running for 4 spots, and 4 Republicans are running. Those 4 will get they'll win their primary.
They'll be there in the fall.
They'll be there.
You've got to get out of this scrum.
Right. Basically, if you win your primary in Montgomery County, you're set for winning the general, because a lot of people run as Republicans, but actually the same guy has run for council Republican and won the Republican nomination 4 straight times and has lost badly in the general 4 straight times, but I applaud his effort to try to make a difference that way, and he's very active locally, politically. This guy Robert Dyer, he writes, he covers everything politically, but he's Republican and he wants to be elected and has a lot of good ideas and has challenged a lot of the things the council has done, and you need the challenge of the other party or someone outside of your party to keep balance, or otherwise you have one view pushing their view on the entire county. And yes, we are 2/3 Democrats here in Montgomery County, but a third who are not and don't always agree with the ways of the council. And the council has such power and sway, and we can get more into this, but they did. One of the things I didn't really know about was, how do you raise money once you're a candidate? What do you do to get money for these elections? Because I was like, well, I'll just run. I'll bookmark a couple $1,000 of my own money. Maybe gets a little bit of money from friends and family, and a couple thousand more, and just use that to run. And then I saw that other candidates have tens of thousands of dollars, if not six-figure, because it's all public knowledge information of what you spend, and you have to submit reports and all that. There's several candidates with six-figure accounts that are spending money, and how can I compete with that? Because they're buying radio and TV and print ads, and they're everywhere
for county council race.
Yeah, for county council. There's and like we have a few 4 or 5 websites that are very dedicated to local politics, and one of those has the ads of the other county council members right there on top banners and stuff like that. So I can't compete financially with them, and
so one of the things that I've found, because as running Libertarian, I ran the statewide campaign. A guy named Rex Bell ran for governor of the state of Indiana last time. We ran against Mike Pence was our governor. So when we got into this race, we thought Mike Pence was going to be running for re-election, and then this thing happened where Pence dropped out because he was Trump's sacrificial vice president.
Right.
And then the next thing you know, he actually won the vice presidency. So we were running against a guy named John Gregg, who had been the Indiana Speaker of House, and a guy named Eric Holcomb, who had been basically a political operative for the previous governor, and then chief of staff for Dan Coates, who was a senator, and then he accidentally wound up becoming the lieutenant governor, and then next thing you know, turned around, he was the guy that was running for governor. So we ran against their big machines, couple $1,000,000 a piece.
Wow.
On $25,000 statewide. And that fueled our campaign from beginning to end. So obviously we didn't have TV. We had web videos. We spent a lot of time and effort and sweat equity putting together some really good web videos for that campaign. And then we spent a lot of money on Facebook marketing. Yeah. Social media has tremendous ability to reach people and get folks passionate.
Right.
So the Facebook model was huge for us in running that campaign.
A couple of people have told me that Facebook is the way to go if you're running on a limited budget. You can really target who you reach, and they can work with you. You can spend $50 or $5,000 if you want to on Facebook ads, and I've seen all the other candidates use it already, and that's probably something I'm going to do as we get closer to the election day. And you found that to be effective, cost effective.
It was cost effective, yeah.
People?
I mean, the thing that happens is you build a community. Facebook has moved into groups, just like the Zabe group that we're a part of. You get a community of people together, and if you have a message or a post that you need liked or shared on behalf of your campaign or an issue you're passionate about, you can get some engagement from people. And it's also a great place to find volunteers, people that, as you watch your community groups, I'm sure we have a thing called Citizens of Henry County, a Facebook group, it's about 6,000 people in it.
Okay.
And you can just watch people in the comments they make, and you can kind of identify people that might be a volunteer, might be willing to give some money towards your campaign. And it's a way to put together your grassroots network so that when you go out and you do your door knocking, I know you've been hitting the doors here in the run up to June. It's a way to find people to help your grassroots campaign.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And sadly for my campaign, I got the hindrances that I have are we have the D.C., Maryland, and Virginia area here where our listeners are, because we're right on the border. I mean, we're 5 miles from D.C. and 10 miles from Virginia, where we are in Montgomery County. So 80% of our listeners are not in Montgomery County, which is a hindrance to us. So I got a ton of listeners in PG County, Arlington County, Howard County, D.C. It's difficult that way. And Virginia is an open primary state. So anyone, regardless of political affiliation, can vote in any primary, and Maryland is not. You
have to be a registered Democrat to vote in your primary here.
Yes. So how is it in Indiana?
In Indiana, we have, I guess, what you would call it's an open primary. Nobody registers with a political party in a state at all.
Oh, okay.
So we'll have our primary in May, and I don't typically vote in the primary. The last time I voted in a Republican primary, I think, was when John McCain ran for president. So it's been a while.
A lot of people don't vote in primaries. That's one of the main problems too. Is the voter turnout?
Yeah,
so little.
It's almost an Indiana crime if you vote for say you pull a Democrat ballot because you want to play Operation Chaos or whatever it is. You are basically committing in Indiana, only you could prosecute yourself for this, so it's a silly rule. But you're saying that I plan on voting for the majority of the Democrats in the fall election. Of course, you could change your mind. You could, there could not be a Democrat you like, anything could happen. But generally, you don't belong to a party. It's an open primary, and you just say, hey, I want a Democrat ballot or a Republican ballot.
Huh, interesting. I wish it was that way here, too, but sadly it's not. It's only registered Democrats can vote in the primary. And, there are 400,000 registered Democrats in Montgomery County, and I think 150,000 Republicans.
So the other thing you talked about was fundraising. In our campaign training, we tell people that your job is either talking to voters or raising money so that you can talk to voters.
Right.
So you take your cell phone out and you almost like turn into an Amway rep. You figure out everybody that's in your phone and you figure out how much you can ask them for money for. And you have to be brave. And as a candidate who's run a couple of times, in the beginning, you don't feel like, you feel very uncomfortable. Calling somebody up and saying, hey, I need $100.
Yeah, that's the thing. 'Cause honestly, I've never given to a campaign. I give some to charity. I give to dog rescue, MS Foundation, a little bit to charity, things that I feel strongly about. I've never given to a campaign because I've never felt so strongly about one person. I've never known anyone who's run. I guess if my friend or family member or someone here at the station was really running and they were not, with lots of financial means, I might give them money, but I've never given. It's just not something I do. So I feel odd about asking people for money for my campaign because with 37 people, 33 are just throwing money away and 4 will. But I sort of see it that way. I know a lot of people don't. And a lot of people are very generous with contributions just on individual donor levels, let alone corporations or groups that are behind you. That's another thing. I don't know how prevalent it is in your race in Indiana, but here there are not really PACs or special interests, but just every group you can imagine for every cause emails every candidate.
Candidate surveys or constituent surveys wanting to know about what issues you care about.
Exactly. So that they can either endorse candidates or contribute to their campaign to, of course, help them get elected. And that's understandable because, if there are big PACs who have interests and this candidate is going to support their interests, of course, they want to support him and perhaps give him money. But it's every spectrum of social and political beliefs. The Democratic Socialists, Bernie's party, they endorse people. I didn't even.
How are you doing on getting their endorsements?
I didn't even answer their survey because I'm like, what's the point? I don't believe in a lot of things that they believe in, and so I don't think that was going to happen. But there were many unions who endorsed candidates. There's FOP and the firefighter union, which I think I hopefully can get because I'm a big supporter of them and have interviewed with them, and they still haven't decided yet. But a lot of it is also you could be, I talked to the Sierra Club, and I'm not much of an environmentalist, so I didn't think they were going to endorse me. But I could be the biggest green thumb environmentalist in the world. I don't think they would have endorsed me because they endorsed the 3 candidates who are probably the most likely to win. And I think a lot of groups endorse people not only based on do they push forward our ideology, but can they win?
They want to be connected when they're actually serving.
They don't want this was our guy, but he lost. So now we have no one in power. So I think that's a huge part that I've talked to other candidates about, that they're like, oh, yeah, you could be the greatest for the Sierra Club in the world, but if they don't think you're going to win, they're not going to waste their time endorsing you. I'm like, oh, well, that sucks because it's kind of like, A plus B equals C, but if they endorse me, I'll have a better chance of winning. And I don't know how much the endorsements really help. They all have their certain number of members, and they'll probably email their members, hey, we're voting for this guy. But are these people going to vote? Do these people all live in this county? It's stuff like that. So
in our market, the endorsements really haven't gone very far. It's more of a personal relationship and getting some earned media. We've got a small town newspaper and then a really small town newspaper.
Right.
And then our podcast, the Boss Hog of Liberty podcast, is like the talk radio of the community.
Right. We haven't mentioned that yet. Yeah. Of course, that's Jeremiah does his podcast, the Boss Hog of Liberty, and it's got quite a following there in Indiana. He's built it very well, and audio and video, and it's a great way of not only publicizing yourself but other candidates, right?
Yep,
and
absolutely.
So tell us a little about that and how you started that and what it's become.
So myself and a fellow named Dakota Davis, I call myself the world's oldest millennial and him the world's youngest millennial. I'm 34 and he's 22 now. He's 21 when we started the thing. We started a year ago, and we're on the We Are Libertarians network. So there's a guy named Chris Spangle who's tied in with the Bob and Tom show, if people are familiar with that, big national radio show out of Indianapolis. He has this podcasting platform, We Are Libertarians. About a year ago, I had been a contributor to his program, and I'm 45 minutes east of the city. I said, I want to try to start my own thing. So I stole a board from him and got some equipment and some information on how to start. And we just kind of put together our first podcast and developed a really nice local following. And in some help from his network as well. We get listeners from all over the country and the world, but the majority of our folks are in East Central Indiana. And over time, we went from doing it back behind my house around poolside to, we need to get a little studio and put a little more permanent setup. So we got some sound tiles. Then, we want to do some video. So we got some fans that kicked in on a GoFundMe, and they've put together a budget for us to get some lights. And then the next thing you know, we've got HD video. So now we live stream every Thursday night on Boss Hog of Liberty on the Facebook page. Got our YouTube channel, and then we're available on bosshogliberty.com. So we've interviewed everybody from county councilors, county commissioners, state representatives, state senators, candidates for Congress. Got a guy that was drafted by the MLB from our hometown, guy named Ben Smith. We had him on. We had Robin Miller, the racing guy from NBC Sports Network, formerly the Indy Star. Just Steve Horowitz, a world-class economist, has been on. It was just incredible reach we've had from a spare bedroom studio in Newcastle, Indiana.
That's very cool. I mean, that's one thing I learned was when I started my podcast. I was like, well, how do I get people to listen or subscribe? Get people on who are more famous than you, or who have at least one person who's going I'm going to subscribe to that so I can listen to him. And
exactly right.
I put our friend Roy Wood on, who's a very successful comedian, and boom, after that, he tweeted it out. I got a few subscribers. I put Czaban. He tweeted out that he's coming on. Boom, I got a few subscribers. And I knew that charging people would be a tougher road than obviously doing it for free. But I'm like, you know what? I want people who are
you get the really committed fans.
Right.
And if you're paying something, you're going to come back and look at it.
Right. And they've been. I've had a wonderful group of supporters here. I mean, they've not only given me money to listen to me, which is one thing, an amazing thing to ask, because so much radio is free. And, our show in the morning is free. Zabe's show is free. And it's tough to ask to pay for something, like a lot of newspaper sites now charge you. You get 5 free clicks a month, and then boom, they charge. Like the Washington Post does that online. They charge you. The Wall Street Journal does that. So I understand it's difficult, but they've been so supportive. I mean, I've got dozens of wonderful subscribers who are fans, and we have this community where we interact. They tweet me, email me. I know most of them because they constantly contact me. It's great. And they helped me out when I printed my Solly Show T-shirts. They bought them. We play fantasy sports with our listeners only in leagues. It's been great. So it's great to build the community of listeners. I mean, I know they all came from Zabe or came from the morning show or whatever, but that's how they found me, because without those shows, no one would know who I am at all. So you got to build and. Did you have radio experience before this podcast, or did you just decide, hey, it's something I want to do, and I'm going to do it?
I was a horse show announcer, a volunteer 4-H horse show announcer.
Show.
That's
Cool.
That's the extent of my broadcasting experience. That and the Sulphur Springs Mud Bog, and maybe a goat show here and there. So a lot of livestock connections. I really didn't have a history in broadcasting. Did a little bit of speech and debate in high school, that kind of a thing. But the podcast is pretty much where I've cut my teeth. If you listen to episode 49, which we did last week, compared to episode 1, we've come a long way.
Yeah, that's good. That you can sort of self-grow in this business, and it's something. When I decided growing up, hey, I love radio. It's a cool medium. I want to be the next Howard Stern. How do I do that? And if you watched Howard Stern's movie, you saw him practicing as a child in his basement with the radio mic. His dad was a radio engineer, and that's how he learned how to do it. And he himself was awful, he would tell you, in his first years in Detroit, and then he was in D.C. in the early 80s, and he learned how to do it better by doing it.
And you get reps by doing a podcast. If people
Exactly.
are listening and this is something they're into, it's a hobby for me. It's probably never going to be a full-time gig. I know that. I'm a steel salesman during the day, but once a week for 90 minutes, we are the political talk show of our area, and we get better every week.
Cool. That's great. And yeah, you've built quite the following. I've seen your Facebook page. You got a ton of likes. That's fantastic. And it's great that you can build something like that in a smaller community, like a 50,000 person county like yours. It's very cool that you can do that. Here, it's so competitive with just commercial radio. People have so many options, let alone satellite radio. And when I decided to start my podcast, I'm like, doesn't everybody have a podcast? Why are they gonna listen to mine? Everyone and his brother have started a podcast, and there's sites like Podcast One that host famous people who start podcasts. So when you're like Adam Carolla or something, and you are already a well-known name because of the Man Show and because of your comedy, you can start a podcast and get, boom, 100,000 listeners your first episode. When you're a smaller personality like me, who's like the sidekick on a local show and a national show, you have no idea how many people might like you or listen to you. So did you guys think initially starting, hey, who the heck's going to listen to us? How are we going to build our brand?
Yeah, in the beginning it was, we were broadcasting for ourselves, and you're kind of trying to figure out who your audience is going to be, and you don't know. For us, we didn't know if we were going to be a national show. It was basically a couple of friends sitting around having a conversation, and then we realized that we're going to be light, we're going to have fun, we're going to talk about real issues, but we're never going to take ourselves too seriously. And honestly, listening to Czaban has been very influential to me.
Cool.
In becoming a somewhat general variety show. We'll have a guest on. Basically, the model is we have myself and Dakota Davis are the main hosts. We host every show. And then we've got a third seat that's a rotating cast member. 3 or 4 different people have held that role. And then we have a featured guest. And they've been anywhere from an entertainment person to a media person to a political person. And then hopefully that person has some sort of an audience, right, so that just like when you have Czaban, they get the message out, and then right, a few of them stick and say, hey, you know what, I kind of like this Boss Hog of Liberty thing, and they stick with you. And we've grown very gradually over time. I joke about it on the show all the time, but we are, like I've said, we're a big ag community. I swear to God, when the farmers got out of the tractors, our listeners dropped by about 30%. And now that we're almost back to planting season, we've seen the numbers start zipping back up. Our downloads legitimately track with the season, and wow, it's the guys that are cutting the grass that want to listen to a podcast. Yeah. It's the guys that are planting or harvesting or applying fertilizer. Yeah. It's very weather dependent.
Right. That's interesting because. You said you've moved a few times. You grew up in upstate New York?
Yep, very far. I grew up in Messina, New York, okay, which is on the St. Lawrence Seaway, 3 miles from the Canadian border, up by Cornwall, okay, Ontario, kind of between Ottawa and Montreal. And so way up there.
And where'd you go on the way to Indiana?
For
your dad
yep,
moved
my
for work?
My dad was a GM guy, so we were in Syracuse, New York. We were in Messina, New York. Muncie, Indiana, and then he's now with Allison Transmission on the west side of Indianapolis at Speedway, which is the connection. Sports, obviously, this is a sports broadcast or a sports station. The IndyCars have been that's like the
religion of Indiana.
Yeah, it's the religion of Indiana, especially in May. To me, it's like it's almost a religious place to go to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the world's greatest race course.
Okay, yeah, that's. The few Indiana people I've known, have it in such high regard. It's high school basketball and racing. That's what Indiana, yep, sports. You got the Colts and the Pacers and all, but
yeah. Well, everybody's got those. Yeah, my
right,
town, Newcastle, Indiana. We've got what we call the largest and finest high school field house in the country. They hold just shy of 10,000 people for a high school basketball arena. It's the largest one in the world.
Wow, that's remarkable.
So, and the Newcastle Trojans made the semi-state, so they lost 2 weeks ago, but they were down. We have class basketball in Indiana finally. Hoosiers can't happen anymore because we have class basketball now, but they were in the 3A of 4, and they lost in the state semifinal a couple weeks ago. But
okay. Yeah, we've had that for as far as I can remember. The class stuff. 2, 3, 4, 5.
We're
5 is highest, I think.
15 to 20 years into class basketball in Indiana. Okay. That's like, if you want to light up a phone or get response, you ask about daylight saving time class basketball or Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame in Indiana.
So do they? I forget what the rule is in Indiana. I know Arizona changed their daylight savings.
We finally got it back when Mitch Daniels was governor. He's the president of Purdue University by the now.
Okay.
Back about 10 years ago, we finally started observing daylight saving time. Unfortunately, Indiana's split, so if you're near Chicago or southwestern Indiana down by Evansville, you're in the central time zone.
Right.
And I live on DC time. Indianapolis into the east is New York, DC.
So you're always on that time.
Exactly,
so
yeah. We're always the same as you guys
I
here.
always wondered, it's got to be awful to live or work near a time zone line, especially in states that are divided like that, because you could work in one time zone and live in another time zone. It's got to be completely distracting.
I think you got to wear an old school watch, right? You can't look at your phone and be like, it's 7 o'clock. Oh shit, it's 8 o'clock. No, it's gone back and forth.
You're constantly confused, I guess. But I never had to do it. We have our East Coast time zone bias. It's the only one that matters, of course, to us because it's 70% of the country is on East Coast time, population wise. So. I think we don't. Although I always thought it was cool because my some of my family's out in San Diego, and you visit them. 10 a.m. football kickoff on Sunday. That's great. You don't have to wait around, and it's over by 10 p.m. or
by 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. You're good.
4 p.m. is the game's end instead of 7, and the night game that we have here at 8:30 is at 5:30 there. I'm like, this is great. I could stay up and watch games if I lived on the West Coast.
I went out to California 2 years ago in April for the Long Beach Grand Prix. The Indy cars ran out at Long Beach, and it was like I was still a single guy, and I said I'm gonna make this jercation and flew out there. I felt like the most motivated guy in California because I was 3 hours ahead of the world.
Yeah.
They're laid back as it is. You come at them, and you if you normally get up at 8 in the morning, you're getting up at 5 out there. You're just it's a different world out there.
Yeah. So now you travel in your job in sales, right?
Yep.
So is it by car? Are you flying a lot, or just always by car to drive around?
Pretty much by car. Yeah. So a lot of podcasts. My sales territory is I'm a boring sales guy, but Indiana, Michigan, Kentucky, and Ohio. So I sell fabricated rebar for bridges that are all over the Midwest.
So you're on the road most days of the week, or is it?
My boss would like me to be, as everything.
Are you in the office?
I'm in the office too.
A fair amount too?
Yeah, Muncie, Indiana.
Okay.
Got a shop there, and that's where the sales office is. And try to get to the.
How long have you been doing that?
Man, I've been in rebar for about 15 years.
Wow,
I've been on the sales side for about 5.
Oh, okay. You gotta I guess, not only driving but traveling, because it's. If you're not into that, it's got to be a grind, because my brother worked in sales for DuPont for many years, and he'd travel 35, 40 weeks a year. And, I mean, it wore him down. And once he had a kid, his wife was like, that's it, no more. Get it now for you're here, because I need you here. So it's got to be it's very – our friend Kevin Sheehan, who works here locally before he got back into sports radio, he traveled 50 weeks a year for 15 years. He never was home.
Yeah, so, luckily for me at least, it's day travel. So it's, I can be in Dayton, Ohio in an hour, or Columbus, Ohio in 2. Get a couple meetings out and be back home. And
so not too much overnight stay or anything like that.
No, it's not that bad.
Are you a married man now?
Man, close. I'm engaged.
Engaged.
We are in the planning strategy sessions. July 7th, as long as I don't screw up.
Wonderful.
So it's coming up quick.
Look at that. Less than 3 months.
The lovely Sarah Potter. Yes.
Lucky woman, Sarah Potter. Good for her. Good for you guys. That's wonderful. So, you have a dog too, you said?
A couple dogs.
Couple dogs.
Got,
all right.
Right after, this is the way it went, Solly. I had a dog. I bought my house 3 or 4 years ago. Got a lab. He's perfect. He was 3 years old, perfectly trained, good to go. He's got a pool, in and out of the pool, full privileges. I got engaged, and like 2 weeks later, we got a puppy.
Oh no!
And she still lives in about an hour away. We're gonna wait until we get married for her to move in, so I'm a single puppy dad.
Okay.
5 days a week with the newborn. So yeah, a little Australian Shepherd named Garth.
Oh.
But a lot of fun. I really enjoy him.
Yeah, I mean, I got the 3 dogs now, and I've never had a puppy. I had I never really liked. Not that I didn't like dogs, I just never had them. And my best friend and neighbor growing up had 5 Cocker Spaniels. And I'd go over there and play as a kid. And the dogs were just everywhere, and it stunk. So that kind of, as a kid, turned me off of dogs. So I never really, I wasn't someone who pestered my parents for dogs like many kids do. Hey, can't we have a dog? They're so cute. So they didn't have to worry about that. And until I started dating a girl 15 years ago, and she had a little dog. And at first I was like, the dog's fine. I'll get used to it. But, we were together for many years, and eventually I was like, oh, this dog's great. I love this dog. Why did I ever not like dogs? And even when we broke up after many years, we split custody.
Split custody of the pup.
Split custody of the dog because, it was an amicable kind of, as amicable as it can be after 7 years together. But, like this dog, I've known her from the time she was 2 to 8 or 10 now, 8 or 9, and she loves me. She's like, all right, we'll do a split custody of the dog. So it was pretty funny that we did split custody for a couple of years. She actually met someone else, got married and had a kid, and they had a little 1-bedroom. So do you want to keep the dog full time? I'm like, sure. So it really all went full circle in the last 3 years of the dog's life. I had her only on my own. And that turned me into a dog guy. I'm like, they're the best. They're the best. And now I have three dogs, and they're just.
Well, and that's something that's on your campaign platform. It's one of your top issues is taking care of pets and animal rescue.
I'm a big dog rescue person. I got all our dogs from rescues. I now work with the rescue where I got the dogs from. I volunteer with them on weekends to get other dogs adopted, and it's amazing to me how it works. I mean, it's not really we do very well in Montgomery County. We don't have strays, or our shelters aren't full of abandoned. We spay and neuter a lot, so we do well here. But other counties and other states don't do as well. And
this is the first dog, this puppy, Garth, that we got is the very first one we've had that's come from a breeder. Okay. Everything else has always been either somebody who didn't have room anymore, they had too many. With my parents, I adopted a couple of dogs from my parents out of the Greenville, Ohio shelter. So yeah, we've generally supported the shelters. This time Dakota and I, my co-host, we both wound up. The girls got involved. His new wife and my fiance, and we next thing I knew, we made an offer, and they said yes. I didn't expect them to say yes, Solly, but they did, and we each had a puppy.
Beautiful, yeah. And they're the best. I mean, it's fun every weekend we go, and we find homes for these dogs, and it's very fulfilling and rewarding. I'm like, what do? I BS on the radio all week. Are we entertaining some people? Sure, but am I doing good in the world? And that's kind of why I decided to run. I'm like, it was always something. Politics was mystical to me, and it's these people who I don't know and never meet are doing these things and making these laws and deciding our future and spending our money. Maybe we need someone else doing it. Maybe you need the regular guy. Maybe we need a regular guy who understands. I'm the son of 2 government workers. I'm not rich. I'm not poor. I've grown up middle class my whole life. I'm still, despite what people might think, you don't unless you're a big star. You don't make 6 figures in radio. It's difficult to get by. So I'm still a middle class guy, and I'm like, well, there's a lot of issues I feel strongly about and that I don't think ever get addressed. And
so have you had a chance to do like a ride-along or anything with the police department in your campaign, getting close to understand what they're going through, what they're dealing with?
I haven't done a ride-along. They talked about that and with the fire department. Because, as one of my platforms is I'm a big supporter of police, fire, and rescue. I always have been. And when I decided to run and form my platform, I thought of just not how to appeal to the most people, but what things I actually believe in.
What you're passionate about.
The strongest. And I've always been a supporter of police, fire, and rescue. I give to our local volunteer fire department, and we have an amazing volunteer fire department here. We have 19 houses that have volunteers, either full or part of the House, and just hundreds of volunteer firefighters who give their time and effort. And we have hundreds of career firefighters who I mean, they're heroes. They risk their lives and are committed to this thing. They have an incredible desire to do this. They have an amazing bond between them, and it bothers me that they're not compensated better. Talked to hundreds of them, and even the lieutenants and captains. They work overtime, and they have secondary jobs to supplement their income because we just don't pay them enough. And I said, you know what? If I'm on this council, we're going to take care of our police, fire, and rescue better because you shouldn't have to work a second job when you're 16 years in and a captain. You know, that's silly. I'm making more than a fire captain. That's kind of silly. You know, who doesn't? When he works overtime, he makes more. But they do a lot of overtime. I was surprised at how many have to do overtime or second jobs, and I'm like, that's not right. You know, and I looked at our budget, and honestly, before I started doing this, I was like, you got to be a lawyer or a tax accountant to understand the complexities of the legalese in these budgets. And they do simplify it, at least on Montgomery County does a good job of summaries and understanding. I'm like, how do they must have a team of lawyers, all these councilmen, to understand this stuff. It's so complex. And they do. They each have a staff, and there's so much council staff who work for the council. It's something I never even thought about, but hundreds of people work on the council and the various departments in this county. We have 10,000 employees in Montgomery County who work for the county.
10,000 employees in county government.
Yep.
It's amazing.
It's an enormous. That probably bothers.
It's a machine, yeah.
We have government machine.
We have, in our county, the county council. We've got 7 county councilmen. They're barbers. They're small business owners. They're I don't think we have any attorneys, but they're salespeople. That's generally where our folks come from,
right.
And they have. They have an attorney that works for the county but isn't a full-time county employee, and
right.
You've got an auditor and a couple other people. But in comparison, obviously it's a different scale.
Yeah.
Your county's 100 times larger in population than Henry County, Indiana. But we definitely run a little leaner.
It's interesting because my girlfriend's family. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I've mentioned it a couple of times. They're from Alabama.
Just the same thing.
Close enough. But no, her parents were both born and raised in Alabama. And her dad's in the Navy, so they moved around a million times, and they finally ended up in D.C. and stayed here, and he retired here. But her uncles and aunts are in Alabama, and they're farmers. They're chicken farmers. It's as rural as can possibly be, and they're in Barber County, Alabama, with population, 15,000. It's very small. I went to the county courthouse with my Uncle Tommy once and he's like, oh yeah, let's go see Bill. He's the county council guy. And I'm like, oh, was that his job? He's like, no, he's a farmer. None of these people are full time. It's no one. The mayor is not full time of their city because it's a very small rural area, and they can't afford to pay a councilman full time. And we have that here. We have a few like municipalities that are pseudo-independent and have their own county council and their own mayor, who are all part-time as well. We have a town, Kensington, that has their own mayor, their own council. We have, it's odd, Rockville has their own city police that are sort of separate from the county police. So we do have a fair amount of people who are elected officials, but also have regular day jobs as well. They work a couple days a week on this. But our county council, I'm not doing it for the money. I would probably do it if it was the same money as I made now. But they are paid extremely well. And
so this will be a full-time job. If you win, this is the end of Radio Solly.
It's possible.
The podcast might survive, but not everything else.
The podcast would survive. I don't know about the rest of it because I definitely can't keep the morning show because they do weekly morning meetings, and I doubt my boss would. Yeah, I need every Tuesday off for the next 4 years. I don't think we could do that.
Our council will meet once a month.
Okay,
it's a once a month for the actual meetings. Obviously, there's committee work and other things
right.
you attend and things you do, but it's a once a month deal for our race.
Yeah, it's very it's it's very time consuming in terms of, because in the last year I've gone to so many events to try to get out there and meet despite being such a huge county, there's a few very influential people who have the ear of a lot of fairly powerful people and can sway voters. So like, oh, you gotta know this guy. You gotta know Alan. He'll you know him and you're with him.
You're good to go.
You're good to go. And like I've gotten a little bit in the inner circle of Montgomery County politics, and it's a lot of the same people, and it's a very kind of niche community. I know all 9 council members now. I've met them all. Some very smart, brilliant people who are doing this, and it's a little intimidating. But I've met a couple who are kind of idiots, so I'm like, I can do this. No, not that they're idiots.
It's all a matter of who shows up. That politics. It's not. There's no such thing as political elite. It's all a matter of who shows up, who's involved, who's interested.
Yeah.
And the more you pay attention, the more you become an expert on it.
Exactly. And I came to this as a novice, admittedly, but not that I'm a genius or a smart guy, but I've seen how they run their meetings. Our council meetings are on television. They have, I don't know how you have it there, but we have a channel it's owned by Montgomery County that shows nothing but county council meetings and hearings and events and forums, and they air them just on this one channel on Montgomery County Cable. It's pretty cool. So I've gone to some council meetings. I watch them at home on TV, and a lot of stuff they don't know what's going on until they have a panel of experts on every issue. When they're doing something about education, they bring in Dr. Smith, the head of the Board of Education, to explain to them about certain issues. So I'm like, they don't really know everything yet. I don't feel so intimidated anymore that it's something so far above my expertise and ability. I'm like, I could do this.
They're all just people. You can handle it.
Yeah, we're not. It's not rocket science or brain surgery here. It's discussion and discourse about the best way to proceed and make our county as efficient and good and as possible. I mean, we're very lucky here. It's Montgomery County. I think people want to live here because the schools are top-notch in the state of Maryland. We're one of the 10 wealthiest counties in the country.
I could tell you had roads paved with gold out there. It was
amazing. Of course,
amazing.
It is. Gold everywhere. Everyone's a millionaire. All the 1%ers have gathered here. No, I mean, we have some neighborhoods that are extreme. We have extreme wealth here. We have Potomac. It's this neighborhood where a lot of millionaires live. And we have Langley Park, which is perhaps the poorest neighborhood in the county. So, and there's the 80% of us who are middle class in between, something like that. So it's a very interesting county, and we have an enormous budget. We have a $5.5 billion yearly operating budget, and we spend incredible amounts on certain things that I couldn't believe. And looking over the budget, at least summaries of how we spend, I'm like, how do we waste this kind of money on things? And
how do you guys get your tax revenue? Is it property taxes out here? You have crazy property taxes. Is it income taxes?
We do.
What generates the revenue?
We get state money like every county does, but property taxes here are an enormous part of the budget. It's, I think, over half of our operating budget is just from the property taxes, which they happened to raise 2 years ago.
Thanks for that.
9% raise 2 years ago in property taxes. The same year that the county council gave themselves a 15% raise. So that upset a tremendous amount of people. They gave themselves a raise from $110,000 to $130,000 almost. They make an incredible amount of money, and that's really what spurned the term limit talk. We have this guy here, Robin Ficker. He's a lawyer. He's always been politically active, and he is kind of an agitator. Like he when there's a problem, find Ficker. He'll kind of cure it. And he was the guy who was like, you know what? They raised our property taxes. They gave themselves a raise. We got to put in term limits and get these council members out. And amazingly, he did. It got enough votes or signatures to get on the ballot. It got on the ballot 2016.
So that's I'll stop you there.
Yeah,
we had a we've got these stupid little controversies in our county. It was stupid to somebody from the distance, but of course to my constituents, they're a very big deal, and we care very much about what they're worried about.
All politics is local, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But people want direct democracy, and unless we're raising property taxes, we don't have referendums. So you sparked my interest there. In Indiana, the only time we have a referendum is if we want to raise taxes or if we're keeping a judge. Otherwise, it's all through your county council, your county commissioners. They're the ones that make those decisions.
So no ballot referendum.
No ballot referendum. So you guys, if you get a bunch of signatures, you can say, "Hey, more than 4 years in office," and throw the bums out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how deep it goes with what you can get, but everyone who votes or is a casual voter. You're voting for your president, your senator, your governor, your congressman, and then maybe you'll know your county council people, maybe you know your circuit court judges, but you won't really know. Every ballot has some sort of referendum that I can remember, and they do a good job of explaining it to people who are reading it for the first time. This means this, but I remember the push for the term limits became local news, and it got a lot of attention because of the property tax raising. No one likes that. I mean, even people who don't vote, which is 80% of people in primaries, what, these sons of bitches are raised our property taxes? Get them out of here. And that was the mentality for a lot of people. And it passed with ease. 70-something% voted for term limits. And I don't know. I don't know how you feel about term limits in general. I'm kind of ambivalent on them. I think if you have someone like in Congress or in Senate who's doing a great job, why would you get them out? But if they are so bought and sold that it's impossible to get them out, I can understand that. And I guess we don't have those in national. I mean, we have governors who have term limits. It varies state by state, but Congress and Senate,
you're there for life.
There for
if you
life.
Want to be. Yeah, I go back and forth.
Yeah.
It's probably safer to have term limits. We have them for governor of Indiana and some county offices. But you could serve for 60 years if you wanted to in the General Assembly or
right.
on a county council. The guy I'm hoping to replace, he's retiring. He's been serving since 1978. So,
oh wow!
So the Jimmy Carter administration he's been there since then.
Yeah, one of our state delegates is retiring. I think she's been there 40 years. So she's. And they're like, oh, is she going to retire? We want her seat, and a lot of people came out after she decided because there was no point in running against her. If she decided to run, she would have gotten reelected pretty easily. So 4
years ago, I tossed my name on the ballot and I didn't spend a nickel. Actually, I spent $50. I spent $50 just on a web page, and he didn't spend anything. So I outspent him $50 to zero, and I got I think 18% of the vote or something.
There you go.
So it was a baseline, but straight. The reality is voters have the choice every election to make a decision, and unfortunately they're apathetic.
Yeah.
And they don't they don't really take an interest like they probably should.
And I'm guilty of that. I didn't vote. I haven't voted in every primary ever because I just was not interested in doing it. And honestly, it's a lot of people don't, at least here, because of the crowds. I mean, you're going to be standing in line. November 2016, you were standing in line because I don't know how many millions of people voted in Maryland, but a lot.
Do you have any early voting at all?
Or
is it on election day only?
We do have. We have early voting 2 weeks before until a week before for 1 week, because the primary is June 26th. We do early voting June 14 through 21, but it's only in 11 locations around the county. So, it's a huge county.
Yeah, you've got to go out of your way to get there.
I don't think many people will do that unless they're definitely want to vote and they won't be here that day, because otherwise it's much more convenient to vote. I think we have 160 voting locations on Election Day, something like that. Every elementary and high school is turned into a voting center.
Yeah, that very recently. I think last year was the 2016 election was the first time we've had it. but you could go to any polling place you wanted to and get a ballot. So you don't have to go to your home polling place now. You could go to anyone in your county.
That's a good idea.
And vote for who you needed to vote for.
I
so you don't have to go to your
that.
home precinct.
Yeah, because early voting, I can understand it. You want to give people the opportunity to vote on a different day if somehow that day they're tied up or working or out of town or something. But it should also give you the opportunity to ease the lines on voting day, and hopefully that's what it does. But in primaries, that just doesn't exist because so many few people vote primaries. I think it's probably across the board in the country. It's that way, not just in our county. I mean, we had, as I've said, like this race for county council 4 years ago, only 6 people ran for the 4 spots because the incumbents really were
very likely to win again.
Very likely to win, and they all did. And the vote total was like, and you vote for 4 out of 6, up to 4. So the highest guy got 40-something thousand. The fourth place guy got 30-something thousand. So out of a county of 1 million people, people are just not voting in primaries. It's and they're trying to there's always a rock the vote campaign somewhere and sign up people for voting. But will we actually get them out? I don't know. I've always thought. I don't know how absentee ballot works in Indiana, but in Maryland they already started it. You can vote absentee, and you can vote. Anyone can do it at any time now, and for 3 months.
Oh, really? Yeah, we've got basically 30 days of absentee voting.
Okay.
So in April, you have to be a registered voter by the time a day or two before the absentee ballot starts.
Okay.
And then you can take an absentee ballot. You can go to the county courthouse or apply for one. They mail it to you, and then it gets counted the day of the election or the primary.
Right. Yeah, they do that here too. But if they started it just this week or last week, so they give you 3 months.
So it's time to vote for Solly now.
Exactly. That's what I'm
counted.
telling people. Because I think, at least in my experience, it was the apathy of, I'm not going to take off work or leave early or go home early to go vote. Although my work was easy because I have time in the middle of the day. But most 9 to 5 people, I think, don't vote because of that reason. They're like, I'm not going after work. But with absentee, you
go now, yeah.
You get it. They mail you or email you the ballot, or they mail you the ballot. You fill it out, mail it back, or drop it off at the Board of Elections or maybe at a voting center, and it's pretty easy. And I think hopefully I've tried to talk about that as much as I can. Whenever I talk about push my campaign, I'm like, you can vote from home. It's very easy, and some people hopefully have picked up on that. I'm not sure if they have or haven't, but I think that's the way to go. I was like, I'll just vote that way too. It's so easy, and
see, no, the social media guy in me says, no, Sully, you need to Facebook Live yourself voting the day of the election.
That's
you make a big,
true.
You got to have a media guy, and you get out there and you say, I'm voting out here, and we're working the poll. You take the day off work, and I would stand outside the poll from for us it's 6 to 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. is when the polls are open.
Are you
I'd be out
allowed
there.
to campaign outside a polling place during?
You can up to a certain point. There's a little cone, the cone of the cone of
distance.
demarcation.
Yeah.
It's like
Okay.
50 feet from the polling place.
I guess so. I guess I have noticed people doing that in the past. So I guess that's. I guess I'll stand outside my home.
That's it.
Polling place, and
you point to your house over there, and you say, "I'm your neighbor. I live
your
right
neighbor,
there,
yeah.
and I care about what you care about."
And that's kind of been my. I mean, we could talk campaign strategy a little. I was like, well, I live in a suburb of, it's called Wheaton, and it's got a few thousand people. And on my initial campaign literature, I put, I'm from right here in Wheaton when I give them the card, so that I use these generic ones for when I go anywhere else. But I was like, well, I might as well campaign in my home area because those votes count the same as the votes in Germantown, 20 miles north of me, and I've never lived there or worked there, but I've lived and worked in Wheaton. So I always thought that's the best way to do it, and tell people, I live right down the street or something like that. And you can do that for a 2-mile radius of your house, which has 5,000 people. So I've campaigned mostly there, and I've campaigned in other neighborhoods and knocked on doors. I mean, do you do that in your race too?
When I ran for state representative in 2012, I think myself and my team, we got to about 8,000 doors.
Wow.
So we worked hard. We walked to pretty much it was over a 3-county area. So 1/100th of the people of Indiana were in our area.
Wow.
We pretty much covered all of Rushville, Indiana, hometown of Tony Stewart, and about 2/3 of Newcastle, Indiana, and all of Hagerstown. So the big towns in each of the counties we got to. And I got about 27% of the vote against a guy that had been in office for 20 years as a Republican. So we, the shoe leather works. If you
Yeah.
get out there and talk to people and see folks, it's
Exactly.
It's very doable. You just have to put the time and effort in and not be afraid to get some help.
It's tough because there's some people, there's a couple people running who have literally quit their jobs to campaign and run full time, or at least gone on sabbatical from their jobs. A couple people have, and I can't compete with that. I mean, they have the resources to do it. They've either saved money or been given a lot of money to afford to be able to campaign full time, and that's
a big investment.
It is, and it gives them the ability to go to every event and to meet and to knock on doors every night or all weekend if they want. And I'm trying to use my time as wisely as I can, because I don't want to. No one's crying for me, but I work a lot of hours doing these two shows, and it's difficult to get up every weekend and knock on hundreds of doors. I've done it a lot, and I also need the weekends. There's in a county of this size, there's a political event every night somewhere where there's voters to reach, and we have a county executive race. We have the county council. I'm running at large, but there's 5 districts where you could also run in separately from the at large. We have our state senate race. We have our state delegates running. We have we have not our congressman. He's running unopposed, but we're in District 8 here, congressional, but Congressional District 6 is literally just 10 miles north is the border. So they're running. I've gone to a bunch of events, all to try to meet new people. And that was the advice I got from someone. Go to every event you can that's not involved with other county council at large candidates, obviously.
You're just trying to build your network and get people to connect with you, and if you make a few connections with people that are like, you know what, when you're looking at this county council race, Steve Solomon's the guy you need to vote for. He's got fresh ideas, or he's the right choice for our community.
Right. And my pitch has been, I can't compete with people who have. I mean, there's people running who are experienced politicians. Some have served in the state house. We've got a guy who worked on Obama's economic policy team. We got a guy who was Martin O'Malley's, zoning and planning guy for the governor. So we have some very experienced people. We have the former mayor of the town we live in is running. So I can't compete with their experience, obviously. And we have the former head of the PTA is running. But then there's the other half of people who are teachers, lawyers, our radio guy who have no political experience, who just jumped in because, hey, I want to make a difference and I want my views heard and I want to voice change. So I've taken that approach too of their ideas they might have more experience, but we can do the job just as well.
Just getting some name ID when the field is as crowded as yours is, it's going to be getting name ID and getting in front of folks. Even honestly, I didn't knock on all 8,000 doors. I got to 8,000 doors.
Right.
I talked to just as many people by getting to a porch, putting something on a front door knocker, and you'd talk to some people and you'd just leave your information.
Yeah.
You may not have the budget to do a direct mailing campaign to all of the people in the community, but it doesn't cost anything to get to somebody's front door.
Right,
It's just time.
Right. I mean, I've those things are cheap. They're 1,000 for $50, and I've printed 10,000 of those in different
iterations of your
view.
Your rat card.
I've got the one just about dogs that I stand in front of Petco and hand out to people.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's a great idea.
And that's really gotten me a lot of people to vote. And the one I did just for fire and police and rescue, and I've gone to every firehouse and police station and met all those people. And hey, tell everyone that I'm the candidate for the firemen, and a lot have. I hope. We've
done some as libertarian and some other campaigns I've been a part of. Indie Pride, so that organization, the gay and bisexual transgender organization, they really didn't have a political home or political ally until the last couple of years. But we would show up every year with, advocating for individual freedom and as libertarians. That was something we talked about, and our candidates would have specific materials that explain that we were their political home, and an issue oriented card that speaks directly to somebody if they're interested in police and fire is a great idea, especially the Petco thing. That's actually brilliant.
I thought, because a lot of people, not that they're, oh, he's a dog guy, I'll vote for him, but it's really an issue that if you're a dog person and you can really identify with other dog people, and it's I think it really has worked well for me and has hopefully gotten me a lot of votes. I don't know. I've given out 600-700 cards at Petco over a few weekends.
Podcasting is very specialized, and running for office is specialized too. If you can identify 20,000 people that are going to vote, some people are going to vote for you just because, hey, Steve Solomon sounds like an all right name. So you got a baseline vote there. And then if you identify more people that through these specific issues that are going to build a coalition to get you there, you only have to finish in the top 4.
Exactly, that's the thing. And I mentioned before when only 6 ran for 4 spots. Now it's 33. It's going to be so splintered.
It's going to be very diluted.
Hopefully, I think the traditional candidates are more worried about that than our non-traditional candidates. I think a lot of people, obviously, if you're a teacher, a lawyer, or a radio guy, you're bringing in new voters who may not have voted before, but they're coming in just because of you. But the traditional candidates who have this core group of people who vote, who are very informed and study who they're going to vote for, it's going to splinter that amongst the Obama policy guy and the governor's assistant guy and the former mayor. Hopefully it splinters those out rather than, I don't think I'm fighting against lawyer Bill Conway, who's running, and teacher Chris Wilhelm for those votes of those very dedicated voters, because I went to a couple of things like voter education classes and campaign classes. They were free. I was like, okay, I'll go. And they're like, well, you have to target people who I don't know if you get the voter data.
Yep.
But the voter data is available of everyone who with their address and if they voted, when, how many times. So some people vote every election. You got to target them, try to sway their vote. And there's people who are registered but have never voted. So maybe don't waste your time on that. But I've tried to appeal to the people who voted at least a couple of times in the last 12 years, because ours goes back till 2006, the data that we got. And I'm like, well, they sometimes they voted. They may not vote every time, but if they find somebody they like, they'll vote. So I knock on those doors too, because there's a million people in this county. I'll never get to more than 2% of them. It's impossible to reach more than a few thousand people. It's very difficult. You can't knock on 400,000 doors. Nobody can. So that's the approach I've taken, is try to find people who might vote, and if they like me and I'm a regular Joe kind of candidate, maybe they'll vote for me. Because I don't know if I can sway the guy who is a very dedicated voter, who is going to vote for someone with political experience. That's their number one quality or something like that. I don't think I could sway that voter. So that's how I've felt about trying to campaigning and how to reach voters. I don't know if it's been different for you.
Well, I haven't won an election yet, so I can't guarantee anything. Yeah. But we have won elections as libertarians in our area. We're like the hotbed for doing this, and I think we're probably going to have 2 or 3 wins in our county.
Okay.
So it's not hopeless. I don't want to say that doesn't work, because there's 5 elected libertarians within 15 miles of my house. So we actually are a legitimate party over there. But yes, you can spend a lot of time and effort, and it all depends upon how sophisticated you want to get. But the average campaign at the level I'm running, or even the state representative level, you're attending fairs, parades, festivals, going to candidate forum nights, you're using your social media platform, and then you're walking as much as you can.
Right.
And then, you got your yard signs. Of course, we're more suburban, so there's guys that build 4x8 plywood signs and put their corrugated yard signs out in our area.
Right.
There's a lot of row houses out here. I don't know how much yard signs make a difference in this area in Montgomery County.
I know. That's always something I did. I printed them just to have them. I printed up 20 because I was like, I'm not going to spend money on 1,000 signs. They were so super cheap once you get volume. But do they make a difference? I always thought. I've seen yard signs for. We have 100 candidates running for various offices in this county, statewide or countywide. I've seen almost all of them have signs. does that sway anyone to vote for you? Does it even ever get anyone to look you up? That's what I've always wondered. Because, there's the teacher, this guy Chris Wilhelm, who's a teacher who's running for council. He teaches in Wheaton, near where I live. So all his students and all their families, they have his sign, and he must have 100 signs in a 3-mile radius. I'm like, does that help?
It helps. It helps with that name ID that we talked about.
Yeah, I guess it does.
So if you can, if you've got a network that you can try to get them out through, it helps. And you in this race, you may not need much.
Yeah.
And honestly, it helps put people on the map and separate you out a little bit where you may not know from one to the next. It also helps, once you have your core supporters, it gives them a little bit of pride where, hey, yeah, I got Solly's sign in my yard, man.
Yeah.
I support him, and I want to show my neighbors. And then there's a little bit of a respect or a general awareness that comes from those. So is it going to make or break? You're not going to win a race just on yard signs,
right?
But if you have them, it kind of shows a little bit of legitimacy and a little bit you're a step above some of the next guy down the line that's not doing really anything.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I suppose it does because at least you remember the name and because you see it all the time and maybe someone who's voting, who's just there to vote for the governor and doesn't even know, I'll pick a couple of council names that are nice. Steve Solomon, that's a nice name. Oh, this guy, I saw his yard sign. I'll vote for him. I guess it does get you votes that way, I suppose, because...
So, honestly, working outside that polling place, I talked about that earlier. I've got data that shows if, the polling places I worked outside of, I was worth 10 to 15% by just having a poll worker and saying, hey, I'm Jeremiah. I'm going to be on your ballot in there, and I want your vote, and I want to get elected and leave you alone. That's that's the message. That's what we're talking about.
Okay.
Those are the little things, and obviously, trying to recruit poll workers isn't easy. But in Indiana, we can get you get a high school kid to stand out there. They get the day out of school for volunteering for you.
Oh wow! Okay.
So you get a free worker.
Huh? Yeah, I guess voting day, I'll stand out there and try to. Outside the cone and try to show people because I got to imagine that it's still most voters don't know who their council members are. Most people don't, certainly. I've learned that knocking on doors and meeting people who are not in the know. I'd say even here, talking to the people at the station, telling them about it, they've lived here in this county their whole life. They don't know anything about the council, what they do, any of the council members. It's staggering how many people don't know about this part. A lot of people can't name their senator or congressman, so that's you never rely on the general public for everything, but most people can't know who at least one of their senators or congressmen or governor is, but don't know who their councilman is and don't know anything about what they do, and that's who I've tried to appeal to, knocking on doors. Someone who's voted. Maybe never in a primary, hey, this is what we do. It's important, and I've seen you vote before, and you should come out and vote again because it really makes a difference. And in this race, this isn't the electoral college like the country. Every vote counts in every local race. It really does. And I don't know if you remember, we saw in Virginia the state house had the coin flip over because they had the exact same amount of votes.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It was. It was like 11,130 to 11,130, and they had one disputed ballot that had one thing X'd out, and because of that, they've done a whole ballot reform change. They're going to change how they have the ballot, so instead of Xing a box, you fill in an oval like a SAT Scantron kind of thing. So it really, every vote counts, and I'm sure in a race like yours. Where it's smaller numbers that win, it sure does count too. Every vote counts.
Yeah, it's going to be like I said. I think it's probably going to take a few thousand. 6,000 or 7,000 votes is probably going to be enough to win our race.
Yeah,
and that's achievable no matter who you are.
Definitely,
you can get there.
And I talked to in our district here, we're State District 19, and there's 80,000 people that live in this district, and 47,000 Democrats. And, I talked to the guy who was running. He's like, I hope to knock on half the doors of voters. I'll try to knock on over 20,000 doors. He's out every night. He says every night now that it's light out till pretty late, he feels comfortable knocking from like 5 to 7:30 every night. I'm like, God love you. That's,
you get your steps in. We had a guy that had to have a knee replacement after he ran for state representative.
It's like I don't work out ever. I like to eat and watch TV. That's I always say, like, walking my dogs is the only workout I ever get, and that's not much. When I first started walking, I realized how bad shape I was in, because I walked for like an hour. I'm like, oh, my feet hurt, I'm tired. I'm in bad shape. So I got like a little step counter for like $20 on Amazon. I'm like, how far am I walking? So, and after 2-3 weekends, I started to actually feel a little better and could walk farther. It was very bad, like how bad shape I was in. That a little bit of walking actually improved my shape. It was terrible.
I've dropped about 50 pounds in the last 6 months, thank God, because I got to do some walking, and it would have, walking in late summer in Indiana probably would have kicked my ass.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's been one of the good parts, too. So, man, we've been talking forever here.
Yeah.
It's been great. But I guess we should wrap up. I want to thank Jeremiah Morrell for this. This has been very fun. And thank you for coming, man.
All right. Yeah, follow us, BossHogOfLiberty.com.
Boss Hog Liberty. I'll when I tweet out the link here of this, and I'll put that on there. And absolutely. Thank you very much. And I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you for listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Get our other shows at WeareLibertarians.com.